Hello there, friends at LILA. Long time no see. Last Friday we had a little bit of a powwow, and we had to sit around, share stories throughout the semester, and it was a great fun. But the reason I'm making this video is that Shalausher, or Yao, as some of you call her, was kind enough to mention that I'm working on a website, and some of you expressed interest in it. Awesome. Uh, I'd love to share it. It is kind of in a state of disrepair. I have not had time to work on it since I started at Leela, but I'm dusting off the cobwebs now and getting things moving again. And so I just briefly like to talk to you about the idea and bounce some ideas off you or whatever. If you think it's interesting, great. If you think it's something that's a waste of time, then whatever. But yeah, I just like to discuss the idea real quick. So currently in the world, there's about 7,000 languages. No one really knows for sure, but with the predominance of the wealthy economies and the internet and AI, right, we are seeing language loss happening at an increasingly rapid rate. And that's something that's really sad. They say something like, in the next century, we're going to have about 1,000 languages left, maybe 100, maybe one. Who knows? But it's a real tragic thing, because when a language is lost, you're losing an entire history, an entire understanding, an entire different way of thinking about the world. And I think that we as U.S. citizens, like talking to my fellow U.S. citizens in this case, we kind of sit on the lazy boy, watch the rest of the world learn English, and we don't really bother to even meet them halfway. Everyone just kind of comes to us. And while you might think, oh, if in this scenario I would like to be the U.S. citizen because frankly you don't have to really do anything, it's a real loss for us too, because one of the most exciting things in my life has been discovering languages and getting involved, right? I feel a little bit like Indiana Jones or some sort of crazy explorer exploring the world and from my own bedroom, so to speak. So anyway, where's this going with all this? Well, I'm going to talk about a website. It's called Project Bifrost. Okay? So I'm going to flip over to their camera here. Boop. All right, so I found this map. I've not made this map. Let me make this. Can I make it smaller? Yeah, there we go. All right, so this is a map of how the Latin languages originated here in, ancient Rome, and after the Roman Empire collapsed, they spread into other areas, which eventually evolved into modern-day France, Portugal, Spain, Romania, Italy, of course, right? And so we can see how all these languages have come out of Latin. Latin is kind of like great-grandpa, and the kids that are around today would be the modern languages of the Latin sphere, like these languages like Spanish, French, Romanian, Italian, Portuguese, whatever. And there's a lot of similarities between them, right? There's a lot of similar grammar structures. There's a ton of similar vocabulary. There's a lot of cultural things that are the same, a lot of the same expressions that exist. And it's almost like you could imagine it like a subway system, right? Like if you get on the main central station here at Latin, you can ride the train out to the land of Catalan, or I don't even know some of these dialects, Galician, Portuguese, whatever. And you can kind of get off at different spots. But the point is you can use your knowledge of one to fast track getting to another, right? So this is where we get the name Bifrost, right? So let me see here. There we go. Bifrost. This bridge right here. In Norse mythology, they believe that the worlds were linked by these different, these little light bridges that connect all the different worlds, right? There's the world for the giants and the elves and stuff. Anyway, they have these bridges of light, and if you knew where to look, you could go between them. Well, that's kind of what this website is designed to do. It's designed to take all these very different regions, these very different languages, and find the bridges between them, right? So one of the big standards that we use in the United States to determine how hard a language is by looking at the Foreign Service Institute's language difficulty ratings. And, you know, you're looking at this map, and once you start to kind of think about it, like over here, closer to home, right, we got England, right? It doesn't take us any time to learn that because we learn it from infancy. And if you want to branch out, maybe in like some of the Western European languages, it's not so hard. But then the further you get away from home territory, generally it gets to be a little bit higher up on the spectrum here. We can see like more oranges, reds, or in the case of Japanese, it's like dark blood red, right? And, you know, this can be very, very disheartening. You look at this map and you think, man, I'm only alive for like, what, 80 years if I'm lucky, 90 max? I don't know. Who's got time to learn all this stuff? That's where Project Bifrost comes in. So, from my own personal experience, when I started learning Chinese, I was looking at the bottom of the mountain right here and looking at the top thinking, oh my God, I'll never get up there. And so you have to struggle and struggle and struggle, and you have to learn how to read tones and characters and blah, 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 blah. And you get to the top of Mount Mandarin, and you're thinking, oh, right, like I did it. But you're still hungry for more. I was hungry for more. I wanted to learn more stuff. And I'm looking at the other mountains, like the other languages, so to speak, like Mount Japanese. And I think, oh man, I have to go back down and start over again. But what if that weren't true? What if instead there was a bridge that connects them? And instead of thinking about having to do it forever, it's just forever, but just once, right? Like learning Japanese for me now, I don't feel as much harder than learning Spanish for an English speaker, so to speak, because I've already put the effort into learning Mandarin. A lot of the characters are the same. A lot of the vocabulary is the same. A lot of the cultural history, etc. It's all very similar. Like, not all of it, but I mean a lot of it. And I actually think that being able to compare and contrast the two has made my Mandarin better, because it's kind of an interesting idea to see, like, okay, I know that this word exists in Mandarin. Does it exist in Japanese? Yes, it does. Or there's a character that exists in Japanese, but it doesn't exist in Mandarin. Well, why? What happened to it? And I love this game. It really gets me excited to think, how would this word sound in this language? Or how would it, like, transform? Or the meaning's the same. I don't know. Maybe I just need to get a life. I don't know. But in my own linguistics pursuits, I've found that all these languages, in this case, are very similar to the story I just said about Latin. They all come out of this Middle Chinese system that existed, or this Middle Chinese language that existed, maybe the Han Dynasty, Tang Dynasty, and was spread throughout the region through trade, through conquest, through religion. And, you know, this stuff just blows my mind. I used to be a history teacher. I don't know if that matters, but anyway. So, okay, that's the general idea. The idea is for us to unsurface or to take off the disguises that separate languages and to help people get excited about learning them, right? Like, I do believe it's a real tragedy that most people on the planet today are only learning, if they learn any foreign language, a lot of them are just learning English. But if they're from an English-speaking country, a lot of times they'll learn Spanish or French, Mandarin, maybe German, maybe Russian, if they're really ambitious, Korean, Japanese. But then after that, if the target doesn't have a significant amount of speakers or a large enough economy, it just kind of gets ignored, right? And I don't blame people for feeling this way. I want to learn Spanish, man. I mean, like, I don't want to die not being able to speak to somebody in, like, Buenos Aires or something. But I also believe that we should be excited about learning all these other languages that we don't really know much about, like the language of here in Minnesota or Wisconsin, right? We got Dakota and Ojibwe, what do they call that? Winnipeg? I forgot the name of the language. I digress. There's all these other languages that we could get excited about. And, you know, I just feel like we should be making an effort to make it as easy as possible for people to learn it. If we can help them achieve the goals that they want, then we can give them new goals, new targets, right? If we can go from the English-speaking language to, let's say, Spanish, and then you can use Spanish to get to French faster, or you can use Spanish to get to, I don't know, Italian or even German or something like that. If you can use your knowledge of one to fast track to others, then, hey, we might be able to achieve these. We might be able to make languages that seem less accessible today more accessible. So anyway, what am I doing? What is this